Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lora Rolling and this is part 4 of the Jolly Snowman ornament tutorial. This is the Jolly Snowman ornament that we are making. It is so cute. I love that turquoise color so much. And today we're going to be doing the unit called Top Snowy Tier. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 3 yet, that's okay. You can do these out of order. I'll have those videos listed down below in the description. That way, once you finish this one, you can go and watch those 3. We just have a few materials to get ready, so let's get them listed and then we can get started. Let's go. So the beads that we're going to be using in today's video are all 11-0 Miyuki Delicas. I have opaque turquoise, white pearl, and silver lined crystal. I'm going to call this turquoise, white, and silver in today's video. We're also going to need some beading thread and a beading needle. I like to use the Eslon Fire in the color crystal, and I use the 4-pound thread. You could also use 6-pound thread if that's what you have. And then I like to use a size 10 beading needle. You could also use an 11 or a 12 if that's what you have. For implements, I like to hold on to my thread with my long nose pliers at the end of the video, and then I cut my thread with scissors. And then to end the tail today, I'm going to show you how I use the fire method. That's all we need to do this project today. So let's thread our needle with 3 feet of thread and then we can get started. So I've threaded my needle and now I'm ready to pick up my first 3 beads, which are all 3 turquoise. We're going to have a lot of turquoise beads in today's video, so I'll call them out, but it'll be a lot of them, I promise. I'm going to take these 3 beads and I'm going to pull them down to the end of my thread, leaving about a 6-inch tail. Now I'm going to tie a square knot, so that means I'm going to cross over on top and then I'm going to pull the tail through. And then I'm going to do that again. I'm going to cross over on top and then pull the tail through. Then we have 2 loops. I'm going to put my 2 fingers in the lower loop, the one that has the beads in it, and then I'm going to pull on the 2 threads until that top loop turns into a knot. Now we have our tail thread. And I'm not going to touch it to the flame, but I'm going to get it super close to it so that it melts the tip. Just like that. Now we have this teensy little bead or tiny little knot. I'm going to keep my 2 fingers in the loop while I'm pulling on the long thread and twisting the loop until that little knot meets the long thread. So just twist it and pull until it looks like this. Now I'm going to take my thumbnail and I'm going to pull that knot all the way down to the beads. And that completes row number 1. Now it looks like our knot is right in the center of these 2 beads. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tug it to one side so that it looks like the thread is coming out of one of the beads. Now let's pick up 2 more turquoise beads. And so it looks like we're coming out of this bead, so let's sew through the next bead, the one that it doesn't look like it's coming out of. And then I'm going to try to get these beads to sit right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 2 more turquoise beads. And we're coming out of this bead. Let's sew through the next bead. Once again, I'm going to try to get those beads to sit right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 2 more turquoise beads. And we're coming out of this bead. Let's sew through the next bead, and we'll also sew through the buddy bead. So we're sewing through 2 beads this time, and each time we do that, what we're doing is we're stepping up and putting our thread in position to start the next row. So that means that we have completed row number 2, and we get to start row number 3. Let's start with 2 turquoise beads and sew through the next bead. Now let's pick up 1 turquoise bead. We're coming out of this second bead right here. We're going to skip the bead that's set downward, and we're going to sew through the bead that's popping up. We're going to call that our up bead. Now let's pick up 2 more turquoise beads. Coming out of this bead, let's sew through the next. Always making sure that those beads sit right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 1 turquoise bead and skip the down bead and sew through the up bead. Now let's pick up 2 more turquoise beads and sew through the next bead. Now we'll pick up 1 turquoise bead. This is our last bead in this row. We're going to skip the down bead, sew through the up bead and its buddy. So we're sewing through the last 2 beads, which means that we've completed this row, and we get to start row number 4. Let's start with 2 turquoise beads and sew through the next. One turquoise bead and sew through the up. One turquoise and sew through the up. I like to turn my work as I go. It just makes it easier for me to sew. That might help you too. Alrighty, this time let's pick up 1 turquoise bead and 1 white bead and sew through the next. One turquoise and sew through the up. 1 turquoise and sew through the up. One silver bead and 1 turquoise bead and sew through the next. One turquoise and sew through the up. And 1 turquoise. This is the last bead in our row, so let's skip the down bead, sew through the up bead and its buddy. So sewing through the last 2 beads in this row, and now we get to start row number 5. Let's start with 2 turquoise beads then 1 turquoise then one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise and one white, one white bead, one turquoise, one turquoise, two turquoise beads, one turquoise, one turquoise, and one turquoise. Sewing through the last two beads, and now we get to start row number 6. Let's start with two turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, two turquoise, one white, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, two turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, one white bead, and one turquoise. Sewing through the last two beads, and now we get to start row number 7. Let's start with two turquoise beads, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, two turquoise beads, one white, one white, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, two turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 white bead, 1 white, and 1 turquoise. Sewing through the last 2 beads, and that completes row 7. Now this is actually the top of row 7 right here, so or the top of our triangle unit. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sew down the next bead without adding any beads, and that puts us in position to be able to start row number 8. Let's start this row with 1 white bead, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 2 turquoise beads, still making sure that they sit right on top of their buddies, 1 turquoise, 1 white, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, and 1 white, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 white, 1 turquoise, and 1 turquoise. Now we are back at the top of our triangle, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just turn my unit over so that we can start sewing down this side of the row, and that will begin row number 9. So let's start with 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 white, 1 white, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 white, 1 white, and 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise. I'm starting to get tongue twisted. 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 2 turquoise beads, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 white, and 1 white. If you notice, this last bead does not have an up bead to sew through. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew down the green bead, and we're going to make sure that our new white bead is sitting where it's supposed to. Just kind of shift it over until it's sitting right on top of the other white bead. Now we're going to turn our thread around. So we're coming out of the bottom of this bead. Well, it looks like the top because I have the triangle turned upside down, but it's the bottom of this green bead. So let's sew down the next green bead. And now we're going to turn our thread. So we're going to sew up the white bead right next to the one that we're coming out of right now. Then we're going to sew up that green bead on the top again and sew down the white bead that we just added. Now we can turn our thread or our unit over, and now we're ready to start row 10 sewing down this side. So let's start row 10 with 1 white bead, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 silver, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 2 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 'I dropped my needle. 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 2 turquoise beads, 1 white, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 white bead, 1 turquoise, and 1 silver. Now we are ready to start row 11. Let's turn our unit over and start row number 11 with 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 white, 1 white, 2 turquoise, 1 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 turquoise, 2 turquoise, 1 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 white, and 1 white. And once again, we don't have an up bead to sew through. So let's do the turnaround again. We will sew down the top bead and then make sure that our bead pops into place. And now we're going to sew down that middle bead, the white one, on the second row. And now we're going to sew up the white bead on the edge and up the middle white bead on the top row, and then down the white bead that we just added. Please feel free to pause and rewind for 10 seconds and then do it again if I did that too fast. That's the beauty of these videos, isn't it? You can pause and catch up, or you can fast forward. Yeah, it's so wonderful. I love YouTube because of this. It's so easy to make things step by step. Alrighty, so we are ready to start row number 12. We need to turn over our unit, and we are now in position to start our row 12 by adding one white, one turquoise, 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 two turquoise beads, one silver, one turquoise, 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 two turquoise beads, one turquoise, one white, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, and one turquoise. Now let's turn our unit over, and we have completed our 12 rows for our unit. Now we get to start adding connection rows. So if this is the first unit you've ever done with me, I always add connection rows so that we can connect the units together. Some sides are going to have beads as their connecting beads, and some sides will not. In this particular unit, we're going to have connecting beads on this side, and we're going to have them on the bottom, but we're not going to have them on this side. So let's start our first side of connecting beads. They're all going to be turquoise, by the way, by adding one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, one turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, 1 turquoise, and 1 turquoise. Now that we are down to the corner, let's cap it by just adding 1 turquoise bead. And it turns it into this little point. And now we get to start the connection rows on this side. And once again, they're all turquoise beads, but I'll call them out for you. Let's start with 1 turquoise, 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 and 1 turquoise. Now we're at the corner again. Let's cap it by adding 1 turquoise bead. It turns that corner into a little point. And now we get to start sewing up 6 beads. I like to follow the quadrant line, but you can really grab any 6 beads as long as you're hitting 1 bead per row. So I like to do it all the way up that quadrant line. 1, 2, and we're not adding any more beads, we're just sewing up the beads. 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now I'm going to do what I call zigzagging. I'm coming out of the top of this bead. Well, it looks like the bottom because we have it upside down, but I'm going to sew in the opposite direction in the bead right next to the one we're coming out of. And then I'm going to sew in the opposite direction again in the bead right next to that one. So that zigzag makes this last bead that we added extra secure. So let's sew up 2 beads. Oh, I caught them both this time. That makes it easier for me. And now we're coming out of this bead. We're going to sew in the opposite direction again and do a zigzag. 1, and then sewing up the one right next to the one we're coming out of. So we zigzagged again, and I'm going to sew up 1 more row and then another row, just 1 bead each row. And now I feel super good about this bead not becoming loose when we're tugging on it or anything, when we're adding our units together and connecting everything. So let's cut our thread. Let's hold it with our long nose pliers, and then we get the scissors as close to the bead as possible without cutting the bead. We're going to snip off that thread. And now we have completed our number 4 top snowy tier unit. We only need 5 of these, so go ahead and do this 4 more times, and I will see you in a second. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for being here with me today and beading along with me. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you're notified when the next video comes out. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks for watching.